First, let's talk about supplies. I've got 9 by 12, 140 pound cold press paper block here. If you're using loose paper, you're going to want to tape that down to a work surface. For brushes, I've got a mix of sizes. These are synthetics. A large round brush, size 12, a 4, something smaller. This is a rigger brush for the details, and then a larger brush for the washes. I've got a watercolor pencil in a gray color. I'm going to be doing a quick sketch of this landscape before I paint it out. You want to have your 2 jars of water, which are off camera for me, but one for your dirtier water, one for your clean water. Your painting palette and your watercolor paints. I've got a mix of tube paints, a lot of Daniel Smith, Da Vinci, Holbein. So those are mostly off camera too, but a big area for mixing. You want to have a spray bottle, a rag. For this piece, I've got a reference photo. So it's this simple landscape, the small cabin and structure beside it. I've worked out a color palette, just what my rich colors are going to be, my different weights and hues. So those are mixed up in my palette. I also did sort of a quick, small watercolor sketch. So a little bit of color for that, those wildflowers there. But just to help me think through how I was going to go about this, looking at the values of the composition. So this is all I've got in there to create my tree shapes, shape of my cabin, just the general shapes that are in the meadow there, this batch of trees. All other details we can add in later. We can keep it nice and loose and simple. All right, we are ready to start painting. So we're going to start with our wash, our bigger brush, and go in with the blue tones in the sky. We gotta go in now and drop in some of our green color because we're getting to the horizon. And the green of our trees, we want that to blend a bit at the horizon. With the sky. We gotta leave the white of the house, the cabin. All right, I want a little bit more dramatic of a cloud, so I gotta darken up my blues around it. So I just want to create a little more of a shape. So you have to paint around your clouds to get them to really stand out. And you can do this while it's still wet. So it blends in. You may need to go in and kind of soften up some of the edges. With a smaller brush. Clean water. Give those clouds some shadow. And the underside. Make sure you don't have too harsh edges in there. Remember, some hard, some soft. And clouds are mostly soft. But if you really want to feel that definition and that contrast, more clear water to soften those edges. Okay, now we're going to go in and paint some of our other shapes. We can go in now, things are mostly dry, so we will paint more of our lighter hillside green color. So it goes all the way down to here. We want to leave some of the paper for some rocky outcroppings. We do have some darker trees that I painted through with the wash, but we can go over those. They're going to be pretty dark, so can be painted over. So bring this down. Remember to leave the white of the house. Take it on the other side. Continuation. Color. Now I'm going to go with my light purple lavender color and create, still got a little bit of the green in it. Go in and paint that field, the light purple of the sort of lavender wildflower. Kind of goes up to the house, and then it'll be taken over by green again. So you want to do a lighter version of the green, because we can go in with shadows. Remember, it's always light to dark. Kind of mix it in to the areas of the lavender. Can leave a little bit of white in places. That can always, might go in with details later, or might be that bit of white that you need later to really give it accent and focal point. So I'm going to go a little darker here at the bottom of the wash, the green color, I have a sap green and the hooker's green. If your lavender is still wet, you can take a lighter, pinker version and drop that in to blend in a few places. Give your purple a little variety, a little more texture. Right along the edge would be the sharpest color, and this leads your eye up to the house and the cabin. And this is, you know, the wonderful part about this paper too, is that it's the way it soaks up the water, and the paint blends things really nicely. All right. We are going to let this dry. Okay, it's all dry, so now I'm going to go in and create some of my darker tree shapes. And I'm going to use this larger brush for this so that I can get the edge of it, kind of give that pine tree texture along the top. You can see I did a quick little practice here. Always good to practice colors, shapes beforehand. Okay. Make sure you're using enough paint. And you can make this as stylized as you want it. You know, realism can be exciting for some, and for others, you want it to be more an expression of what you're seeing. I am going to fill in most of the green. There is some, you know, lighter coloration down along the base in some places. This is where we'll want to get a little more exact around the cabin. So you can add, dragging the brush works well too, kind of squiggling drag. It bunches up the pigment in places too, which is a natural sort of shadow. Make sure you've got enough paint mixed up so you can get all the way across your composition. And while things are still wet, you can drop in more shadow around the base. So add some more of your darkest gray or black. Kind of get in there and drop in just the suggestion of shadows between the trees and up the base of trees. Remember, it always dries lighter, so it doesn't hurt to add a lot of color and richness. You'll be happy that you did. So I went in with even more. All right. Do need to make that larger mass of trees up here on the hillside. So to mix up a little more of my dark green color So it's going to have to be nice and dark so that it sits in front. And these are just try and use the same type of loose. For the details on the edges, I'm going to have to use a different smaller brush. I'll go with the medium round because I can get to the tip there. Create some of those shapes. I'm just lifting out a little bit so you see through some of the green from below. So those aren't a total silhouette. I did want them dark, but painted them a little extra dark. Foliage shapes. Get some of these to blend in together. So you can create the shapes that you're seeing, you know, in the meadow there, kind of up the hillside. You can go in and add some shadow around the one side of them. You got to decide what your light source is. In this picture, it's coming from the right, so the whitest white will be on this side of the cabin. There's some highlights in these rocky outcroppings, maybe some light colors there in the fence. I'm going to continue with the medium mid-tone greens along the hillside. All right, we're going to go over the lavender field again, make it a little richer. So just a clear wet brush. So I'm going to start with the lavender. Drop in some darker tones. spread it down a little. That pink purple. And then I'm going to bring in some dark green to add interest down in the foreground. Keep some textures in there. Too close to the palette. Just a little bit of green up mixed in with the lavender. While it's wet, I'm just going to drop in the lavender a few more places, sprinkled around as it looks in the field. And then there's some lavender blue flowers down in the foreground. Just for a little added color pop. I actually got some opera pink out to do a couple of bright pink spots right along the edge, because that is what you feel when you see that kind of mass of lavender. It turns into a bright purple pink at the tips. All right, I'm going to paint some of the shadows on the house, so some of the different gray tones, leaving the white on the right side, but painting just a very light, extra light, that's too dark. Shadow on this side of the structures there. I'm going to start out light. I can always go a little darker, do kind of a brownish roof color. Again, needs to be super light. This is where you need your sheet to test it out. Get your roof color in there. Same color roof for the small structure. All right, so I'm going to do just some quick little gray lines just to define the edge a little bit. It'll kind of drop in some shadow. On this side of the house as well, because it's still wet. All right. I'm going to do a little bit of a brown, gray-brown fence, which I think is like maybe a horse pasture. keep it loose, not totally exact, but some fine little details are always kind of nice. We need the other brush to kind of drop in a door. Very simple suggestion of, still pretty wet. All right, but I want to do a little bit more with the grass and some of the darker details, sort of in the back horizon of trees. So I'm going to take some of this green. Just wanted to give it a little more there in a few spots in the field. So I'm going to start with sort of the darker shape you're seeing, sort of the top edge of these, the greenery, and then soften it with clear brush. Some of this is actually still a little too wet for this, so we'll just use that texture as our foliage. Work with it. Because there's lots of different wildflowers and grasses growing in this field. So you want to kind of feel more texture, more things happening up front anyway. You can go a little darker. Pick up some of that darker gray tone. Whatever grays and blacks you got in your palette. Okay, like I said, I wanted to add a little bit more to the tree line in the back, and I love to paint some of that tree detail. So it's basically like creating another row of trees. So you got to come up with your style. I mean, we already kind of established this silhouetted, loose tree style with the wash, the wider brush. So we want to keep it really loose, but we do want to add some more detail. So I want to make sure that these are in front, this larger batch here. So make sure that those are stronger. You want to get to the fine point of the brush for those details. The tip of the tree. And then really abstract, loose, just to give it more of an alive feel. And you can still use your reference picture, or you can just kind of go by intuition too, and what is feeling right for the piece. What does it need? Some more shadows, dark green here. Get that green on the hillside and a few more places. You're always going a little darker. We're just trying to add some textures, some visual interest. Go back to my tree line. just a few more fine details. I'm going to use that little brush, add some grasses in the front. Again, just trying to keep it loose. But add something to give it a little visual interest here in the front, to kind of balance out the darks that are happening further back in the painting. So the cabin needs just a couple more dark details so that it holds up to the dark colors happening elsewhere. So just a few spots. And I guess we're done.